Live from Washington, D.C., Jay Sekulow Live. Phone lines are open for your questions right now. And now, Chief Counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow.
Let's start with the Planned Parenthood case because we're in week 2. By the way, looks like it's going to be a 6-week trial. Our team is in California, in San Francisco, on that trial. That's going on right now, literally as we speak.
This is a case where we have an actual client, being sued by Planned Parenthood. So this is not like a civil case about Planned Parenthood restrictions on abortion that the state is handling. We are actually the ACLJ having to defend a client from being sued by Planned Parenthood, being treated. This is a civil matter. There's also a criminal matter, and they're trying to get this client. Of course, they would like to bring the criminal matter to our client as well. We've been successful so far, and I think Planned Parenthood has had some big missteps in court via their attorneys. But again, I wanted to highlight this because this is when the ACLJ plays this unique role,
yes,
where we are representing those who are on the front lines of the pro-life movement, who get the videos, who expose this, and who then come under attack by Planned Parenthood. Dad, you've had Supreme Court cases about these guys.
Yeah, I've been fighting Planned Parenthood in the Supreme Court for 3 decades.
It's not the restrictions and rules that states or federal governments impose or funding. It's the exposing which they can't stand, or the speech that they want, the abortion distortion, and they're losing it. And they actually brought it on themselves this time after keeping these videos out of the public after they went public for almost 4 years. Now it's all being talked about again openly in court.
It's the irony of this is that their lawyers fought like the Dickens to not have that happen, and then they just opened the doors. Harry said, my goodness. You talk about negligence. What are they thinking? We don't want you to talk about illegal conduct. Then the first question, literally it was one of the first questions asked of one of the first witnesses. Not what did you do? In other words, I went in, I bought. Why did you do it? Well, why did you do it was I thought they were engaged in illegal conduct. And it still blows my mind, Harry, that they opened up the proceedings after spending a week trying to get that stuff out, not allowed to be in there because they got a jury they're dealing with, that they would do that.
Yeah, so I think this is obvious and unmistakable legal malpractice. Secondly, I think it indicates that the lawyers do not understand their own case. Keep in mind that Planned Parenthood initiated this action. So why did they initiate this action in the first place? They initiated this action, at least in part, to prevent the further distribution of these videos, but nonetheless, at the trial, they basically opened the door to have a full discussion of the contents of the video. This makes no logical sense, but I'm glad they've made these types of mistakes that the lawyers have, because this will then lead to a wider exposure of Planned Parenthood's misconduct.
But Wes, part of this, and I agree with everything Harry said, but part of this is a campaign by Planned Parenthood to dehumanize the unborn child.
Yes. Absolutely. They do not want to admit that this is a human being, that they are actually taking a human life. It is not an embryo. It is not fetal tissue. It is a human life. And interestingly enough, as I said earlier, that's what they're trying to use as their cover. And yet they're talking about the parts, the literal parts that every one of us have in our bodies as human beings.
All right, we're taking a break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by a lawyer from the ACLJ. Fighting for life in Europe, too. Big fight, actually. We're also talking about the UN Human Rights Council. Hey, Than, give us a 20-second on that one. Just a little teaser. You're not going to believe this, folks.
Well, 47 members of the Human Rights Council. I think the new additions might surprise some people. Libya, Sudan, and Venezuela, Jay, they were all elected to the United Nations Human Rights Council. Might be a good thing the United States decided to leave it.
Yeah, that's the Human Rights Council. If that's what we're basing our human rights on, the world has a big problem. And these countries, this is what tells you what a farce some of this is. All right, we're getting ready to take a break. We are standing for life. We're talking about a case now out of California, 6 weeks in trial. Your support of the ACLJ during this Matching Challenge Month is critical. Go to ACLJ.org. That's ACLJ.org. And any amount you donate, we get a matching gift for. So let me encourage you. There's a number on the screen if you want to call your pledge in as well. But just go over to ACLJ.org. Taking a stand for life. This time in federal court in San Francisco. Back with more in just a moment.
Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion business in America, is murdering unborn children and then selling their organs. Federal law bans the sale of aborted babies, but the abortion industry is exploiting a massive loophole. At the American Center for Law and Justice, we're demanding Congress investigate Planned Parenthood's gruesome practices and close this abhorrent loophole. We're taking on Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry in a major trial and in multiple Supreme Court cases. We could not mount this battle without your support. Right now, your gift to the ACLJ will be doubled through our matching challenge. A $20 gift becomes $40, a $50 gift, $100. Stand with the ACLJ now in the fight for life. Online at aclj.org.
We've been talking about Planned Parenthood, but let me tell you this. We've got our European Center for Law and Justice has NGO status, non-governmental organizational status officially before the United Nations. Now, we fought for that. It did not come easily. It took us about 2 years to get it. We had to fight and fight and fight. I conducted the final push on that and did the if you call it a hearing, I guess, of our admission, and we fought hard and we got it. We won, but we had to fight for it. The interesting thing here is the book that's been presented that our team has published out of our European Center for Law and Justice, which is comprehensive. It's almost 300 pages. It's called Law and Prevention of Abortion in Europe. We've been talking about abortion in the United States, but we're doing this on a global basis. And the issue, Christoph, of abortion comes up within the United Nations context. I mean, it does come up in the United Nations, correct?
Of course.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now you've been talking of the Planned Parenthood since the beginning of the show, and they are very active at the UN. There are many NGOs, Planned Parenthood, Maria Stops, and other NGOs that are fighting for making abortion an international human right, as a matter of fact, which is why it's important that we are there to fight back. And in any document the UN is potentially publishing, they try to have the health, maternal health, and sexual and reproductive rights included. So it's the vocabulary they're using to pushing abortion, and they're doing everything they can to have every country providing for abortion.
So, Than, when we talk about, in the halls of Congress, you come up against Planned Parenthood all the time, but you are one of our designated individuals within the United Nations. You're fighting them there too. This is exactly what Christoph said.
No doubt about it. Had a team of 5 up just a few weeks ago at New York at the General Assembly arguing for religious liberty, including the right to life. Jay, this is something I think is really important for our members to hear. One of the things that we hear all the time when we're up at the General Assembly is, look, it's just too hard to get the world to pay attention to these issues of life or issues of human rights. Jay, what we tell them when they say that is, let me show you a video or a transcript of our European counterpart, Christoph, inserting these issues into these chambers. We're just an NGO. Yet we make the case you are a member state. There is no excuse for you not advocating for these issues just like we do. Jay, Christoph is absolutely right. It's a regular issue, but it is an uphill climb to get member states to engage on them. It's why it's so important that we have that consultative status.
One of the things, Jordan, that we deal with on this, and I want to get into the particulars of this UN Human Rights Council, but the United States pulled out of the UN Human Rights Council.
The U.S. pulled out of the UN Human Rights Council in 2018 for 2 reasons. One, because we didn't want to keep funding all these anti-Israel resolutions. I mean, it was like a mini version of the General Assembly. It's anti-Israel, anti-U.S. As we'll go through, we go through these members that are now on there. Even if you go through the current members that are on there, I mean, it's not like these 3 are like Libya, Sudan, Venezuela, who are new to it, are the only bad actors on there. You could go through and look at this, say, Angola, Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. I mean, these are not necessarily stable places. Pakistan, Afghanistan. Not stable. Right. You look through it and you say, this is another reason why are we sending all this money there? And then you throw in a Libya, which is a failed state, Sudan, which had an overthrow of a dictator who was wanted by the International Criminal Court for war crimes. But now the overthrow of the dictator is a military dictatorship, which we've seen happen time and time again in these African countries. So they're going to be on the human rights. Venezuela starving their own people with Maduro, who we don't even recognize as the leader, and they get elected. Now, there's also another reason Christoph brought this to my attention, that the U.S. left, which is a little more technical, but it's pretty clear. The Human Rights Council decided that you'd have to have a 2/3 vote of the 47 to remove anyone from the council who is violating human rights.
So there's
more people on the council who are human rights violators than aren't.
Yes. So that means
seriously.
So how does that work? So in other words, to remove somebody, 2/3 have to go ahead.
To have to vote against this country. So with the Arabic majority, or you just have to have some alliances and you keep your seat. And the other thing is that there are 47 seats, and they have to have a balanced representation per region in the world. So you have to have 13 people, I guess, from Africa, about the same number from South America. So they end up being compelled to elect human rights violators as members.
So human rights violators make up a majority or because of the 2/3 rule.
Well, and then Western Europe only gets 7 seats, and Eastern Europe gets 6. Latin America and the Caribbean gets 8, so they get more than Western Europe. U.S. is included in like Western Europe.
Yeah.
So when you add up Eastern Europe, Latin America, Asia Pacific, like China's a lot of other dictatorships, Vietnam, Myanmar, others. Keep going through that list, and then Africa, which I'd say about half the countries are dictatorships or at least phony democracies, even when there's been. Or failed states. Like Libya is a failed state. They have leaders, but there is no leadership. It is a war zone. And again, Sudan also is now a military dictatorship after finally getting rid of Omar al-Bashir, wanted for war crimes and crimes against humanity and genocide. He's now being tried by the military that he once led in Sudan, but the military took power even though the people pushed him out. But guess who else utilizes the UN Human Rights Council? Not just human rights abusing states. Oh, yes. International Planned Parenthood Foundation. They're also an NGO, and you would think they'd be with the Population Fund and other places like that, which are rife with funding abortion. We also stopped funding that as the U.S. government stopped funding that finally, which pays for international abortions, which violates our laws also, Mexico City policy. But guess who wants to make abortion a human right? Well, of course, the International Planned Parenthood Foundation. We have to fight them. Here's Christoph, so you can all hear what he's doing. You've mostly heard him talk about individuals persecuted for their faith, but this is about fighting back on life at the Human Rights Council.
At the UN.
The European Center for Law and Justice has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The ACLJ would like to alert member states to the current attempt to create a universal right to abortion. Indeed, the Human Rights Committee, in its last draft general comment on Article 6 on the right to life, is trying to impose the legalization of abortion and euthanasia against the will of state parties, against the letter of the text, and in contradiction with its mandate. The draft fails to mention the right to life of the unborn child and presses states to legalize abortion on demand and without limitations. Any limit on abortion is seen by the committee as a potential violation of women's rights. As to euthanasia, the committee is openly promoting assisted suicide. It is absurd and unacceptable to draw from the right to life a right to kill an innocent human being or a right to be killed. The ACLJ must remind this committee that its job is to interpret the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, not to create new rights or obligations. Article 6 was never intended to give ground to the idea that the life of the unborn is not worthy of protection, quite the contrary. Interpreting the article in a way that creates a right to abortion violates both the Covenant and the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. The ACLJ invites state parties and the committee to reaffirm that the right to life, the most precious one, is to be promoted for every human being from conception to natural death. Thank you.
So there you have it. That's Christoph, who's with us in our studio today, but actually at the United Nations, at the Human Rights Council, standing up for life. So your support for the work of our institutions allows us to do that. So in Geneva or in San Francisco, ACLJ, ECLJ, our affiliated organizations are there. Now, Christoph has and our Director General has put together a great book called Law and Prevention of Abortion in Europe. This is being distributed everywhere. Again, this gives you an idea of what we can do when we work together. Your support of the ACLJ allows us to fund the European Center for Law and Justice. Folks, we're going to have a lot more ahead. We're talking about international issues affecting life. You know, in a program last week, we talked about the issue of life as it relates to a fight in San Francisco. This time, it's at the United Nations. Your support of the American Center for Law and Justice allows us to deploy our lawyers out of our European Center for Law and Justice in Strasbourg, France, and battling in Geneva. Go to aclj.org. We're in a matching challenge. Any amount you donate, we get a matching gift for. aclj.org. Back with more in a moment.
Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion business in America, is murdering unborn children and then selling their organs. A senior Planned Parenthood abortionist was caught on camera detailing how they crush the baby, altering the abortion procedure so they are very good at getting the heart, lung, and liver. They sell the baby's organs so, quote, it doesn't look like they're making money, end quote. Federal law bans the sale of aborted babies, but the abortion industry is exploiting a massive loophole. At the American Center for Law and Justice, we're demanding Congress investigate Planned Parenthood's gruesome practices and close this loophole. We're taking on Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry in a major trial and in multiple Supreme Court cases. Add your name to our petition right now. Sign on to our petition to stop harvesting aborted babies' organs. Add your name online, aclj.org.
The European Center for Law and Justice has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The ACLJ would like to alert member states to the current attempt to create a universal right to abortion. Indeed, the Human Rights Committee, in its last draft general comment on Article 6 on the right to life, is trying to impose the legalization of abortion and euthanasia against the will of states parties, against the letter of the text, and in contradiction with its mandate. The draft fails to mention the right to life of the unborn child and presses states to legalize abortion on demand and without limitations. Any limit on abortion is seen by the committee as a potential violation of women's rights. As to euthanasia, the committee is openly promoting assisted suicide. It is absurd and unacceptable to draw from the right to life a right to kill an innocent human being or a right to be killed. The ECLJ must remind this committee that its job is to interpret the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, not to create new rights or obligations. Article 6 was never intended to give ground to the idea that the life of the unborn is not worthy of protection, quite the contrary. Interpreting the article in a way that creates a right to abortion violates both the Covenant and the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. The ECLJ invites state parties and the committee to reaffirm that the right to life, the most precious one, is to be promoted for every human being from conception to natural death. Thank you.
So this is probably something that is a little new for you, because we usually show, when we show Christoph, or when we actually have gone over to Geneva and made an oral intervention from our American staff or other European staff or international staff, or have made interventions, or the family members, they have been family members of persecuted Christians, those who are being imprisoned for their faith by a member state of the UN. That's what we usually think of, I think, when we show you Christoph or one of us or one of those family members at the UN doing this. But there's a whole other angle to the fight that the European Center for Law and Justice is engaged in at the UN Human Rights Council. You know the UN Population Fund is no good. It's all about funding abortion. And the U.S. stopped funding it like it stopped funding the Human Rights Council. But what you might not know is that and we played it before we went to the break, Christoph talking about this move at the UN Human Rights Council, Christoph, to make abortion a human right. The idea that if you are not pro-abortion, and when it means pro-abortion for Planned Parenthood, that means abortion up until birth, basically, that you are somehow they couch it in you're anti-woman then. And I wanted to ask you this. So Planned Parenthood is actively there, like as an official organization, just like we are?
Yeah, indeed. Planned Parenthood is an accredited NGO at the UN, just like we are. And not only Planned Parenthood, there's Maria Stopes, ILGA, Amnesty International, actually. It's
takes that position
very
too.
much pro-abortion. And then they're active in the Human Rights Council, but they also are very active in each human rights bodies that exist within the UN in Geneva. And so they frame abortion as a right for each committee. So there is a committee against torture. If you're anti-abortion, you're in favor of torturing women. Access to abortion for women is a human right. And if you you prevent them from accessing abortion, you torture them. They frame everything. Women's rights, discrimination against women. That's a committee you might have heard, the CEDAW, Committee on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. Preventing women from having an abortion is breaching their rights. And so they frame abortion in each committee. They're very active to make it a human right.
And what's interesting, we forget this as the United States because we talk about the life issue very publicly. But, we're one of only 7 countries in the world that allow late-term abortions. Yeah. It's none of these European countries that are, some of obviously the UN is not just Europe, but it's not the European countries that you would think would be so liberal on this. And most of them, it's first trimester and that's it. Nothing past that. So the debate has gotten even more technical, but Planned Parenthood is making that move to say, wait, hold on, that's not enough. And so they've got the International Planned Parenthood Foundation. Remember, they're $1 billion organization in the U.S.
Just in the U.S.
So they're huge. I tell you, they're like dealing with a big oil company.
Yeah.
International global conglomerate. And then they've got these side groups who do their bidding too, like Amnesty International, who, by the way, doesn't like talking about that in the U.S. You don't hear that much from the Amnesty International U.S., how pro-abortion they are. As a human,
what does that have to do with amnesty? It's obviously not amnesty for the unborn.
Or human rights. I mean, when you're talking about people being in prison. But again, this idea. Now, this is what I wanted to get to, though. Even with all this move by Planned Parenthood, by these bad state actors who we know are human rights violators, it almost becomes laughable to have a Venezuela, a Sudan, and a Libya on anything called a Human Rights Council. There's ways to get positive action done because the UN has special rapporteurs that are not affiliated with countries and staffs and committees that are not affiliated with countries that can launch investigations and actually put pressure on the bad actors. And we've actually been successful in getting those special rapporteurs, Christophe, to take on our cases to these countries, to the UN, bypassing all of these bad actors, really.
On the pro-life issue, there's the Committee on the Right of Person with Disabilities, for instance, who recently took position against the discrimination of disabled children that are aborted because they are disabled. And so
that's at the UN.
At the UN, so you have sometimes some good positions that are taken by experts that are thinking and seeing the discrimination for a disabled child to be aborted up to birth in many countries.
Of course, we had that here in the United States where they were, we talk about the Virginia legislation, the proposed legislation in Virginia, the one that passed in New York, and when the Virginia legislature, I will never forget that legislator when she was talking about her bill and realized what was coming out of her mouth. I think even she was stunned with what she was saying.
I think you're right. I think she was stunned with her own barbarism.
Yeah.
And so it's important to keep the pressure on Planned Parenthood. It's important to keep the light on these international activities that are designed to advance an abortion agenda.
And so we've also, and this is important because the ACLJ, all of you, we talk about this, but we show you the videos, but the ACLJ and our members, our donors, supports all of this work going on at the European Center for Law and Justice. It's the main source of funding comes because of you. Because if you're pro-life, you want to be pro-life not just in America. You want to be pro-life at every international institution. As you say, as Christophe said, you can get victories at the international level that you may not even be able to get in the United States. Before we get to the publication that was released by the European Center for Law and Justice with experts going through country by country on abortion and then getting it to politicians. So written, not like a law review article, which of course Christophe and Gregor and our team could do, but written so that politicians who weren't legally trained could understand what the abortion laws were in their country and what could be done to make them to do more things that are more pro-life. So, Christophe, tell us about this project.
Yeah, we tried to do a comprehensive work, treating abortion topic from A to Z, and propose solutions too. So we went on all the aspects of abortion. So, for instance, the medical issues that are attached to abortion. There are severe consequences for women that resort to an abortion, but also, for instance, guaranteeing the social right not to abort, because Planned Parenthood and others are pushing for abortion as a right, as something good, great, whereas on many occasions, if the women had the capacity to keep the child, they would. It's because of economics quite often, and so the states are pushing for abortion, whereas they should help families to grow and to be able to have as many children as they would like to. And there's the conscientious objection issue.
Yeah, conscientious objection, right?
For institutions, for religious hospitals.
And that includes medical professionals too.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of those cases right. I mean, a number of those cases right now.
Yeah, not only the physician himself, the nurses, but also the institution.
Are there a lot of those cases developing? Are you starting to get some of those?
Oh, there have been a lot for decades.
Because we have, I mean, that's becoming a big issue here in the United States.
So I just want to say, the only European country that allows late-term abortion is the Netherlands, which was also like the leader on euthanasia. The rest, Singapore, Canada, the United States, China, North Korea, and Vietnam. So most of the world, I mean, Christophe we're really able to really fight there in life and get big victories at the international level, but we need your support. We need more Christophs, if you will, because you can go to that Human Rights Council. There are people, if you watch that video, Dad, they're always there.
That's going to do it for the broadcast. We've been talking about the life issue for a couple of weeks here. We've been litigating the life issue for 3 decades. Your support of our work at the ACLJ keeps us in court. Go to aclj.org in this matching challenge month, aclj.org. That's aclj.org. Any amount you donate, we get a matching gift for. aclj.org or call the number on your screen. Talk to you next week.
Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion business in America, is murdering unborn children and then selling their organs. Federal law bans the sale of aborted babies, but the abortion industry is exploiting a massive loophole. At the American Center for Law and Justice, we're demanding Congress investigate Planned Parenthood's gruesome practices and close this abhorrent loophole. We're taking on Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry in a major trial and in multiple Supreme Court cases. We could not mount this battle without your support. Right now, your gift to the ACLJ will be doubled through our matching challenge. A $20 gift becomes $40, a $50 gift, $100. Stand with the ACLJ now in the fight for life. Online at aclj.org.